As Hope said, my name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau, and the mission in my work is to empower people to make informed food choices, to debunk myths about veganism, to be a voice for animals, and to give people the tools and resources they need to live according to their own values of compassion and wellness. I always say that I'm not asking anyone to live according to my values. I'm urging people to live according to their own values. And I do think that people are interested in making this change. I really come from the very optimistic position that people are really interested in making a change. And we see people making this change all the time, which is really encouraging. Some people are doing it for health reasons. Some people don't want to contribute to the violence against animals. Some people don't want to contribute to slaughterhouse workers being desensitized to their own compassion and to the suffering of the animals they're killing every second of every day. Some people don't want to contribute to global depletion and the destruction of the rainforest so that we can create grazing land for cattle. Some people don't want to contribute to the resources that it takes to breed and keep and kill animals. I always say pick a reason, and any single one of them would be a reason to choose a plant-based lifestyle. So I see people making these changes all the time, and that's incredibly encouraging, but despite these compelling reasons, people still seem to have blocks when it comes to actually making the changes and certainly sticking to them. Right? So many people who really want to manifest their values in their behavior are interested in doing so, and yet there's something that stops them from doing it, and why is that? So I don't have all weekend to talk about why that is, because there are a lot of reasons, but a few of them, one of them is that we are bombarded with the information several times a day that we should be consuming as much meat, dairy, and eggs as possible, right? Several, probably thousands times a day. I mean, you can document it yourself. You could document yourself how many times we get this message from the radio, from commercials, from television, from magazines, from menus, from billboards, right? All of it, right? We're getting this message constantly that we should be consuming as much meat, dairy, and eggs as possible. We live in a culture that doesn't support us making the most helpful choices, the most compassionate choices. It actually works against us, right? So we get this message constantly. We get this message in our own homes. One of the things that breaks my heart more than anything is that we encourage children to be compassionate. It's one of the basic tenets that we teach our children. It's what all of us were taught when we were growing up. It's what all of us were taught. And yet, we're suspicious of that same compassion in adults. We call it sentimentality. If someone is an adult and they're compassionate and they care about animals, we don't value it the way we value that compassion in children. And yet all of us are taught to be compassionate. I think all of us can identify with that process of coming into this world innately compassionate and connecting with animals and connecting with our compassion, and then eventually having that kind of dulled and kind of set aside when we become desensitized to that. I know a lot of us can identify with that process. And so ultimately the messages that we get is that we should choose convenience over our compassion. We should choose status quo over our own values. And so those are some of the things that are working against us, that are not in our favor in terms of manifesting our own values. We also are bombarded with myths, so many myths and misconceptions that keep us from making the changes we say we want to make, particularly myths around nutrition, around food, around the animals. And what happens is we tend to use these myths and these misconceptions as excuses to not make the changes that we want to make, especially around nutrition. I mean, most of us have the same myths around nutrition, right? And all of it stems from the fact that most of us are raised to believe that the nutrients we need are animal-based, right? Most of us are raised to believe that, right? So if I were to ask you where we're taught we're supposed to get our calcium from, you would say, don't say kale, because that's not kale. No one is taught that, really, sometimes, now. You, but not everybody, right? So we're taught that we're supposed to get our calcium from cow's milk. We're taught that we're supposed to get our omega-3 fatty acids from fish. And we're taught that we're supposed to get our protein from meat, eggs, dairy, really, all of it, right? Everyone's obsessed with protein, right? Everyone's obsessed with protein. It's the number one question we all get, so let's do the protein question. I tried to be vegetarian and I just needed my protein. Really, like how did you know that? I just needed my protein. I just needed protein, so I had to stop being vegetarian. Well, how did you know you needed protein? Well, my body told me I needed protein. Well, what did your body say? Like, I don't know, like, how did you know what it was saying? I don't know. I was tired. And okay, that's not really protein deficiency, but what else happened? I don't know. You know, I was anemic. Okay, that's iron. That's not protein. It has nothing to do with anemia. Everyone's obsessed with protein, and yet no one can tell you what protein deficiency looks like, right? Raise your hands. Have you ever heard of heart disease? Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Have you heard of cancer, diabetes? Do you know anybody who's on cholesterol-lowering medication? You've heard of blood pressure-lowering medication? Raise your hand if you know someone with kwashiorkor. Kwashiorkor. Anybody? Kwashiorkor in the house? Nobody with kwashiorkor in the house? You'd think we'd know someone with kwashiorkor, because kwashiorkor is the scientific term for protein deficiency. So you'd think we'd know someone. Are there any kwashiorkor wards in the Sonoma County hospitals? No kwashiorkor specialists in the house? If we have a protein deficiency issue, we don't have a kwashiorkor specialist in the house. It's very dangerous, right? So we're all obsessed with this idea that we're not going to get the protein, but no one has ever met anybody with kwashiorkor. It's because we don't have kwashiorkor in developing nations. We've seen people with kwashiorkor, we've seen hunger organizations show us pictures of people who are living in parts of the world who have distended bellies, who have yellowing skin, right? They have kwashiorkor. They're not getting any protein because they're not getting any food. So the only time we truly see protein deficiency in developed nations, quite literally, is when people are so sick that they're not getting the nutrients they need, or they're anorexic and they're not eating food. And quite literally, that's when we see true kwashiorkor. But the problems we have, the diseases that you're all familiar with, those conditions that you're familiar with, that you raised your hand about, those are diseases of excess. We don't have diseases of deficiency. We have diseases of excess, right? Anybody with rickets in the beriberi? Anyone scurvy? Right? We took care of the diseases of deficiency. We're in a place in our development where we could be the healthiest population ever with the information and the access to nutrients and food that we have, ever. And yet we're dying of diseases that we have no business dying from. We think we're so developed. They would love to be able to take care of those basic things, people in developed nations. They'd love to not die of scurvy, which we don't have to worry about, but we're dying of the diseases of excess. That's our problem, right? So that's what's happening. The problem is that we're all taught the nutrients we need are animal-based. The bottom line is the nutrients we need are plant-based, period. The only nutrient that's not plant-based is vitamin B12, but it's not animal-based either. It's bacteria-based, right? So even that isn't the reason. It's all the nutrients are plant-based, right? So right now, what we're doing, we're asking the wrong questions. The question isn't where do vegetarians get their protein? And it's not to say that these aren't important nutrients to make sure we're getting. It's just that we don't have to be obsessed over them to the degree that we use that as an excuse to not do anything. That's what I'm saying, right? But, so what's happening is that we're asking the question, where do vegetarians get their protein, when what we should be asking is why are we taught that we should go through the animals to get to the nutrients that the animals get because the animals eat plants. We need to skip the middle animal and go directly to the plants, go directly to the source of these nutrients. And when we do so, we skip the saturated fat, the animal-based saturated fat, we skip the dietary cholesterol, we skip the heavy metals, and we go right to the vitamins, the nutrients, the minerals, the phytochemicals, the antioxidants, the folate, the fiber, all of the things that originate in plants. The problem is we're going through the animals. And when we do so, we're basically, squandering everything, the resources that it takes, ethically, resources, health-wise, just the consequences to doing this make absolutely no sense when we have everything we need from the plants themselves, right? If you were to look at calcium, for instance, and the resources that it takes to get what we're taught we should get through cow's milk, right? So, well, let's back up just to make sure we're all on the same page, because we weren't on the same page about the lights. So, what's calcium? It's a mineral, thank you. It's late, it's dark. Some of us don't think it's well in the dark. It's not dark, that's not dark. Calcium is a mineral, right? And where are minerals found? In the ground, in the soil, right? In the earth, right? And so why do cows have calcium in their milk? Because they theoretically eat grass, right? The idea is that they're getting the nutrients from the plants themselves, and they then take the nutrients, and there you go, right? It's theoretical, because most cows these days, dairy cows, are kept on dry lots. They're not eating grass. And so in order for the dairy industry to live up to the marketing claims that it's a high calcium food, what do they do to their feed? They sell, I have no idea what you said, but I'm just going to answer. They supplemented, you all said the right answer, probably. They supplemented with calcium, right? They supplement their feed with calcium. You could supplement your feed with calcium. It's very simple. Like, you could just supplement your feed with calcium, right? Or you could just go to the plants, right? But instead, so we have to start with a cow whose feed is supplemented, right? Who then has to be impregnated because, of course, as a mammal, the only way that they're able to lactate is by being pregnant. She's a mammal. And I remember when I learned that, and I was an adult, and I was a pretty smart adult, but I hadn't been taught that cows have to be pregnant in order to lactate. We don't even say that language. We don't even use the language lactate. We don't say cows lactate. We don't say cows produce milk. We say they give milk. As if they come into this world ready to still upon humans, they're nutritional. I'm here to give my milk. That's the language that we use, and that's what we wind up believing. We really do believe it. So I know that there is someone in this room who either just recently or just now realized I had no idea cows had to give milk, because we're not encouraged to believe it. We believe that it's just part of the process and it's really a gift from them to us, right? But the truth is, they have to be pregnant for 9 months, and at the end of that 9-month period, all she wants is her baby. That is all she wants. And there's no denying that. She wants to nurture that baby, she wants to nourish that baby, she wants to clean that baby, she wants to feed that baby. That is all she wants, and she is not allowed to do that. That baby's taken away from her so we can take her milk. And if she's female, she goes into the same servitude as her mother. And if he's male, and 50% are, he's killed right away, or he is raised for 16 weeks, chained up and kept for veal. And I remember when I first learned that these babies are just incidental, that they exist only because she had to be pregnant, right? That was so shocking to me. That's the only reason they exist. And of course, the dairy industry wanted to make sure it was profitable, and that's why they sell the males so that they can get money. They don't do it to the females. A lot of people ask why they don't do it to the females, because these are animals who are bred specifically to be milk machines. They're not bred to be big, stocky beef cattle, so that's why they're not sold to the beef industry. They're bred specifically for their milk. So all of this for what? So we could get the calcium that is in the ground, right? I mean, if we were to understand, just think for a moment that this animal, this baby, was allowed to, just kind of eat on his own and not be taken away, right? Over time, he'd be drinking from his mother, he'd be getting his nutrients from his mother, and then what would happen over time as he gets bigger? He'd start to wean, right? It's a concept some of us understand. He would be weaned, and he would move on to solid food, and he would get the nutrients directly himself, right? Now, we can understand this a little bit, because we go through that sometimes, and then we're weaned, right? And then we're told, hang on, don't be hasty. You now need to consume the milk of another animal, even though the offspring of that very animal has stopped drinking his mother's milk. Have you ever seen an adult bull try to get milk from his mother? No, you haven't. Have you ever seen an adult human? There are probably videos somewhere on the internet. But if I were to even suggest that we market it and it becomes something that we should consume, just the idea that we should consume our own milk into adulthood, we are absolutely disgusted by that. And yet we are conditioned to believe that we should be consuming the milk of another animal, right? I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Of course it doesn't, and that's what the conditioning has done to us, is that we think it's weird to consume our own species' milk, but there's not a problem drinking another animal's milk. So why cows then? Why did we pick cows? Why did we pick humans? I think we know why we didn't pick humans. Why did we pick other animals? Why cows? Why goats? Why sheep? Why buffalo? Why camels, right? What is it about these animals that make it conducive that we should drink their milk? What's so special about their milk?
Docile.
What?
They're docile.
Right, so it has nothing to do with the milk, right? It has to do with the nature of the animals. So they're docile animals because why? They're herd animals, right? They're easy to keep together, they're easy to control, right? That's the idea. If we wanted to get the highest amount of calcium from an animal's milk, we should be drinking hyenas milk because they have a lot of calcium in their milk. They eat bones, because that's what they do. But there's a problem with that business model. See where I'm going with this? They'd kill you if you tried to take their milk, or their baby, or tried to impregnate them. It wouldn't work so well. So that's the problem. that's how arbitrary it is. It has nothing to do with the milk. It has everything to do with the nature of the animals. So that's how arbitrary it is. So the idea is that we skip the middle animal, go directly to the source, go directly to the nutrients, go directly to the green leafy vegetables to get the calcium, and skip the middle cow. Because of course then when we're doing so, we're also skipping all of the other problems that we don't need. We don't need the saturated fat, we don't need the dietary cholesterol, etc. Right? We only get the good stuff with the greens. Does that make sense? Right? And you can do that with every single nutrient. You can do that with the omega-3 fatty acids, right? Omega-3 fatty acids. Why do fish get omega-3 fatty acids? Why do they have omega-3 fatty acids in their flesh? Because they eat the algae, right? They don't just come into something and get some omega-3 and give it to the people who eat me. Like that's not how it works. Like they have to get the nutrients from somewhere. And so they're consuming the smaller animals, some of them are carnivorous, and they're consuming the smaller animals who then consume the algae, or they're consuming the algae directly, right? And so we're going through all of the same thing, going through the middle fish, and we're getting the saturated fat, dietary cholesterol, all the problems. We're getting some mercury thrown in, some heavy metals thrown in. And that goes for the farm-raised fish too, because these are carnivorous fish, and they have to go to the wild ocean in order to get the fish to feed the carnivorous fish, right? So you don't get away from it even then. And if the fish don't get omega-3 fatty acids, and let me tell you something, they're not putting algae inside these confined tanks, in these confinement tanks. They're not getting algae, you're not getting omega-3 fatty acids. So skip the middle fish and go directly to the plants, go directly to the flax seeds, to the walnuts. You can go straight to DHA, which is what our bodies can convert these EFAs into anyway, which is sourced from algae, and we can get all the nutrients we need better, right? So those are some of the myths that we all hold, that we all walk around using to keep us from making these changes. Some of the other blocks that we have to do with food. One of the things that I try to do is to take vegan food out of the box called vegan. I'm always putting in quotes, vegan food, because vegan food, we oversay vegan. We oversay. We have friends, they're all vegan. They say, I went to a vegan restaurant, I had vegan food, and I had vegan. I know you're vegan, so I know that's what you're eating. Like, you can just say I had food, and I just had cake. Like, we overuse this word vegan like it's a special food group. And we do tend to do that, right? And we being the vegans, and I'm hoping we're not the only people in this room, but we overdo it because we all feed into this idea that there's like regular food over here, and there's like vegan food, right? It's like some special food group just for the vegans, right? So vegan food, when I try to take it out of that box, and really, when we're talking about vegan food, we're talking about fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and beans and mushrooms and grains and spices. It's food that people already eat. It's not some special vegan food. This is the vegan banana. This is the banana. It's the vegan apple, and it's the apple. It's just an apple, and I know it's vegan because it's an apple, right? So we can just take that out of the box, and when we do that just in general, it just relaxes everybody, and it feels so much less daunting and so much less intimidating, and it feels so much more familiar because it is. And that's the first thing I say to people when they say, I'll be like, I don't know if I've ever had vegan food before. If you had vegan food, you had an apple, you had some vegan food, right? So we gotta take this idea out of there that it's something special. So that's the first thing. A lot of people, in terms of other blocks related to food, I think the issue isn't just the food, it's really our perception of ourselves. So much of this is about our perception of ourselves. There's never been one person I've ever said I'm vegan to who didn't say, I don't eat a lot of meat, I don't eat a lot of dairy, I don't really eat meat. Well, I don't really eat meat. I've never met anyone who does not have the perception that they don't eat a lot of meat, ever, right? The truth is you don't know how much you eat until you stop. That is when you're aware of your behavior, that's when you're aware of your habits, when you stop them. Because what's happening is we all make the same choices over and over, we all go to the same restaurants over and over, we get the same things off of that menu at those restaurants over and over, right? We eat the same things again and again, and we're not aware of what's over here. We don't even know that there are other options because we're not looking through that lens. It's always so cute when people say, vegans, like, so what do you eat? Not a lot of variety, is there? And I'm thinking, I know you eat like the same 5 things over here. We all do it, we all do that as humans. And truly what happens when you make the decision and you change the lens through which you look, and it's one of the reasons why I wrote the 30-Day Vegan Challenge, because you have to stop it long enough to create new habits. You have to stop it long enough to create new foundations. Because if you just do it once in a while, you're not going to ever look over there. But if you make this decision and go, okay, I'm not going to do it for 30 days, so I'm going to have a hamburger now. Wait, I'm not eating hamburgers, so what's over here? And you go, oh my God, there's like other foods over here, and cuisines, and restaurants, and things that I've never tried before that you wouldn't have looked to had you not made this decision. It has to be this kind of conscious decision to try something. And then the behavior changes, changing behavior really does change the way you think. That's really how it works, which is really powerful. So the idea is that you have to create a new foundation. So many people who told me that they tried being vegan but stopped, I know it's because they removed things that were familiar to them and they didn't replace them with anything else. You have to create another foundation or you'll just flail and you're not going to stand on firm ground. So it's a matter of creating a new foundation, and when you do, that becomes second nature. Right, does that make sense? That becomes second nature, that becomes the habits. So when people say to me, God, vegan, that seems so hard, my answer is, it's not, in the sense that it is just as effortless choosing vegan as it was when I was choosing what I was conditioned to choose over here. But the transition is challenging for people because we're such creatures of habit. And that's really what it comes down to. And so holding your hand and coming to a place like this and finding resources, that's what really guides people, because you learn some new habits that you wouldn't have before, right? But those new habits become second nature. Speaking of nature, one of the things that we also do when we think about making a change and then we are blocked immediately, people say things like, I tried being vegetarian, but I really craved meat. Anybody ever say that? You ever hear that? Yeah, I tried. I'm really craving meat. And I said, you weren't craving meat. And they go, no, I was really craving meat. I was really craving meat, and then I had a burger, and it was really good. And I said, you weren't craving meat. And they go, no, what? And we have an argument, because you're not craving meat. You're not true carnivores. We're not obligate carnivores. We are not lions on the plain who see gazelles run by and think of lunch, right? That's not what we do. We do not crave the flesh of another animal. If you want to know what it's like to crave the flesh of another animal, if you've ever seen a domestic cat, see a bird, or squirrel, and their eyes dilate, and their tail starts to flicker. And they don't care about you, because you're not even there. And they make this little chirping sound when they drool a little bit. Is that how you get when you see a bird? When you see deer, some cattle grazing on the side of the road. Please say no. That's not how we get, right? We don't even react that way when we see animals who've been hit by a car on the side of the road. Our first thought is disgust, and our second thought is compassion. We don't take out our forks and start making a lunch, right? Please say you don't. I hope not. But the point is that we don't crave that. That's what craving flesh is. That's what craving meat is. That's what craving animals is. We don't crave the flesh of another animal, but we do crave fat. We crave salt. We crave flavor. We crave familiarity. We crave texture. These are all the things that we crave, and I use the word crave loosely because in our wonderful, advanced, educated culture, we're all tempted to use words that add some scientific credence to them that really have to do with desire and pleasure more than need. So when I say crave, we often use the word crave when really we just want something. We do that a lot. So, but we crave it. We're used to that. We're used to that. So often when someone says, like, I love my hamburger, I love my steak, whatever, I could never, stop. I crave meat. I said, it's not that. It's the fat, it's the salt, and it's the texture. They go, you're right. It's the fat, the salt, the texture, and all of those things are in plant foods, right? All of those things are in plant foods. The problem is that we were taught the meat, dairy, and eggs before we were taught what it was that we were actually getting, the fat, the salt, the texture, the flavor, the familiarity. So what I recommend people do is when you think you're craving something like a burger or cheese, right, the big one for people, I recommend that you first go, wait, what is it that I really want? Oh, it's a certain mouthfeel, it's a creaminess, it's a texture, it's a chewiness, it's the fat, it's the salt, right? First identify those things, and then you can get those things satisfied from plant foods, right? So it's a matter of changing the medium of those things. Does that make sense, right? So if it's the fat, have some peanut butter. If it's fat, have some avocado or some guacamole. Put it on your burrito. sandwich, put some nut butter in a smoothie, have nuts, right? Have tofu, it's a higher fat food. Beans are higher fat, all good fats. If it's salt, have some salt, like, just have some salt. It's not complicated. But one of the problems is, and I mean this, I don't make a lot of guarantees, because I'm gonna get letters if I make guarantees. People are gonna go, you said this, and I'm not gonna make the guarantees. But I will guarantee you that when you get meat, dairy, and eggs out of your diet for at least 30 days, your palate will change. And the high amounts of animal-based fat and salt that we're so accustomed to, that our palates are covered with right now, we don't have that same, it stops coating our palates. And our palates change, and we don't require or crave that same fat and salt. So even though I'm saying, like, okay, when you're craving fat and salt, have the fat and salt, you will crave it less. You absolutely will. So the amount of sodium that we get in so many of the processed foods and the animal products, we get less of it and we crave less of it, right? Because we only crave what's in our bodies, right? Right? I mean, most of us aren't craving cocaine. I'm going somewhere with this. I'm going somewhere. Unless it's in your body. I mean, once it gets out of your body, you're not craving anymore. And that's the idea with something like meat, dairy, and eggs too. So once you don't have it anymore, that's not what you want more of. Like, I never thought I was going to crave kale. Like, I didn't grow up craving broccoli at all. I would hide it under the table and give it to my dog. Like, I did that, right? But who knew, right? So what happens is you start to develop new taste, and you start to develop a new palate, and it's really true. And that goes with the texture. If you want something chewy, eat something chewy. Like, it doesn't have to be an animal, right? It doesn't have to be that. If it's something creamy, you can get it from making, nut cheeses or cream sauces or guacamole, right? So identify what that craving is, and then meet the craving with the plant food. Does that make sense, right? And then there are more excuses. I could go on and on all day with the excuses that y'all give me, because I'm the one who hears from all you, and then I gotta come up with an answer for them. Then I hear people say, okay, fine, I would try it, I wanna do it, I'm really interested, I wanna eat healthier anyway, and I wanna do it, but I have to chop so many vegetables. It just takes so long to chop the vegetables, and I'm so busy, I don't have time to chop the vegetables. Like, why like this? I can help. It's amazing how we sabotage ourselves, right? We have to chop the vegetables, it's gonna take too long, I'm so busy, everyone's so busy, right? I get it, we're busy, but I really don't believe you when you say that you don't have time to chop some vegetables. First of all, if you're not vegan or vegetarian and you don't have time to chop vegetables, I'm worried about you that you're not eating any vegetables at all, because everybody should be chopping vegetables. I don't care where you are on the spectrum, right? But we do have the time to chop vegetables. We're not making the time to chop vegetables, and we're not taking the time that we have to chop vegetables. I know people are watching some TV shows out there because they're very popular, and the interwebs, people are on it. So they have time, but they're choosing what to do with their time. And they're choosing to not chop vegetables with their time, right? And so the supermarkets have figured that out, and they're taking your money because they're chopping the vegetables for you. And so you can decide at any given moment, do you want to spend your time or do you want to spend your money? But you have that choice, right? That's really what it comes down to. And I think we do have the time. We just have to prioritize what it is that we care about, right? If we don't have the time to be sick, then we have to make time to be healthy. That's the bottom line, right? So we have time to get in the car, right? Drive to a restaurant, wait for a table, sit at the table, decide what to order, wait for the food, eat the food, wait for the check, and drive back home again. I'm thinking we have time to chop some vegetables. Just saying, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how we want to spend our time. I have strength, I need protein. So old, that joke. I'm so big, I'm so big. So I think we do have time. We just have to make the time. So one of the things that happens too is, what happens is, these are just little tricks we can play on ourselves that make a difference. We go to the grocery store, go to the farmer's market, we get all our vegetables, we're really excited to eat healthily. We get home, we put them all in the fridge, we're gonna eat healthy, and I'm so excited, I'm getting some new recipes, and I got vegetables, right? And then we go down to the refrigerator, and we open it up, and we look at all the vegetables, and we go, I'm not gonna eat, there's nothing to eat in here, because the broccoli is still in a bunch, and the cauliflower is still in a head, and the carrots still have their tops on, and potatoes, not the vegetables. And so we call the pizza guy, or put pizza in the microwave, and wait for it. We might have some time, and we don't chop the vegetables. And then we go, how do we keep vegetables from going bad in the fridge. They're going bad. I have a really amazing tip. I don't know if you've heard this. Write this down. It's amazing. The best way to stop vegetables from going bad in your fridge is to eat them. Not treat the refrigerator like a compost bin, right? Because we just say, how long can I keep them in the fridge, right? Just eat the vegetables, right? So here's a tip. Before you put all of the vegetables into the refrigerator, it makes such a difference. Chop them. Seriously, take 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to take more than 10 minutes to chop some vegetables and put them in the fridge. And it works. It's amazing. You feel like little sprites came down in the middle of the night. The next time you open the fridge, you're like, there's carrots, and there's peppers, and there's onions, I can stir fry and snack on them, right? Or you can get them chopped out from the grocery store. Maybe one week you want to do that because you're busy that week, busier than usual, right? Another week you do it yourself. You can do that again. We always decide if we want to spend our time or our money. But when we have them chopped up in the refrigerator, it really makes a difference in terms of considering that, right? Because then people go, but if they're in the refrigerator for too long, aren't they going to lose their nutrients? No. They're not going to lose their nutrients. Someone else back there told us we're going to lose their nutrients. They're not going to lose their nutrients if they're chopped up for a couple days in the refrigerator. After a week, I might say, you might want to be eating them before then. But here's a tip. Vegetables chopped in advance are more nutritious than no vegetables. Amazing how that works, right? So these excuses that we just use excuse after excuse. You see where I'm going here? And we're the ones who sabotage ourselves. And we're the ones who are our own worst enemies when we should be our own best friends to make the difference that we say that we want to make, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, but I think people forget that in order to make a difference, we might have to do something different, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, right? Everyone says they want to make a difference, and ultimately people do ask me if I think that people can make a difference. My answer is no. I don't think people can make a difference. I know people do make a difference. Everything we do, every action we take, everything we eat, every product we buy has an impact on someone or something else. We don't get to decide whether we can make a difference or not. We get to decide only if the difference we inevitably make is negative or positive. That's it. Those are our only two choices. There are no neutral actions. And I think this concept, this idea, is both frightening and empowering to people. It's empowering because it means that we're responsible and we have a tremendous amount of power. And it's frightening because it means that we're responsible and we have a tremendous amount of power. Because ultimately, it comes down to us to make the difference, to manifest the values that we say we have. Despite the cultural messages we get, despite the advertising we're bombarded by, despite the myths that are pervading in our culture, it comes down to us manifesting our values in our behavior. Because what I know for sure is the problems we have in this world are not because we have so much compassion we don't know what to do with it. The problems we have in this world are because people aren't living according to their own values of compassion and kindness. Imagine what this world would be like if that were on our to-do list every day. And so that is my hope for everyone. That's my hope for every single person, for all of us, to realize that we have the power to make this world what we want it to, our own lives, this world. And so my hope is that we reflect our deepest values in our daily choices and realize that with each bite we take, we can create the world we want. Thank you very much. So did everybody hear the question? The question is, she had some friends who said they tried to, they did become vegan for a couple weeks, and they almost died. That's really what almost died. They got so sick, they lost weight, they got so sick, and they just had to go back, right? So what do you say to that? What do you do with that? You know, it's really hard because one of the things I talk about is when we get those responses from people, questions from people, you know, we can't say that didn't happen, no, that didn't happen. You can't deny that that's what their experience was, right? And yet, it's really unlikely that happened. What happens is, and I say this to a lot of people who will start finding things different after they make the change. Because what happens is you're starting to look for things and you attribute every single thing to being vegan. Now we get this, I get this, and we do this. Vegans do it to each other too.
I have a cold. Oh, well, like, maybe it's because you're not eating the right amount of kale or something, I don't know. Or I'm feeling great, so it must be because you're vegan. Like, we attribute every single thing to it, right? It's powerful, but it's not everything. We're also still human, so there's still going to be other factors at play. So I would invite them. Now, this is the trick. You have to find out first if they want an answer to your question, because they might not. Because not everybody who's coming to us with comments or questions actually wants an answer. Sometimes they're just looking to express, vent, right? Get validation from you. And we have to decide how we want to play. If someone's genuinely coming to me and saying, I didn't feel well, I really want to do this, but I didn't feel well, what should I do? Then we can talk to them. One of the things that happens, and I do think this is real, is that because we're eating fewer calories when you're eating plant foods, because there's more calories in fat than there are in protein and carbohydrates, what happens is that sometimes people aren't getting enough calories. And what's calories? Calories is energy. So sometimes people do feel more tired because they're not taking in as many calories as they used to or as they need to. So one of the answers is eat more food. And that will give you some more calories, that will give you some more energy, obviously, and especially if it's plant foods. So those are kind of all those things I'm throwing at you, but really the first thing is you have to find out if they really want the information. And sometimes you can ask them, did you want my opinion? Do you want me to answer that? Because I'd love to talk to you about that, but I want to make sure that you're really asking me. And I think sometimes that helps. And I think sometimes it helps asking them back and really making them accountable for what they're saying too. Let them hear what it is they're saying without you feeling like you have to have the right answer. Yeah, good question. So before you chop the vegetables, do you wash and dry them? It depends on the vegetable. I don't do it at all with any of the green leafies. I wait till after they're chopped and when I'm going to actually use them because they'll just go too limp. But even carrots, yeah, carrots and celery, I'll wash them first. Celery I'll often store in water anyway. Carrots do really well just chopped and thrown. You can wash them first because they're hardy enough. If it's something like potatoes, I just forgot my words, potatoes, sweet potatoes, what are they called? Tubers and, thank you, root vegetables. You lose your words after a while. Root vegetables and tubers, once you chop those, you want to store them in water because they oxidize very quickly. So it depends on the vegetable. Green leafies, no. Store the tubers and root vegetables in water. Carrots and peppers and celery, they're hardier, they don't have to be, they can be washed first and they can take it. But don't let them sit in too long, because they'll start to break down. So the myth about, so people who want to defend and justify the consumption of in this case, beef, saying that it's actually a good thing because of carbon sequestering to actually have cattle grazing. Well, the answer is no, of course not. I mean, if they're really interested, you can also talk to them about, again, you have to find out if they want to answer, if they want to have a conversation, because often we just want to kind of spout our opinion and kind of declare who we are. This is me, this is who I am, this is what I believe. It's different than what you believe, I'm right or wrong. That's often what we do. We don't really engage in a dialogue. So first you have to find out if they want to have a conversation. What I think for me is really compelling from an environmental standpoint is I do feel very strongly about what we're doing to wildlife. And in fact, cattle are invasive species here in the United States. And as much as I love visiting my cattle at sanctuaries, they are invasive species and they're wreaking havoc on the land. And we're killing wildlife at the behest of ranchers. That to me is a problem right there. There's nothing natural about that. We're decimating wildlife for domesticated, artificial species, invasive species. So, maybe that's something they'd be interested in because, deer poop too. And so there's carbon sequestering with deer. That's what I said. Carbon sequestering deer, woohoo! Thank you. Look, there's room for every voice and every method in this movement. And we all need to do what is right for us, what works for us, what resonates with us, and what we think resonates with the people that we're communicating with. And I've heard people talk about this, and there's lots of engagement and conversations around what's the best way to go about this. And if I had that one answer, I'd be doing it right now. I'm not even sure this is the right answer. All I know is that everyone I talk to wants to make a change, and they go, how? My work isn't one thing. My work is, let me help you. It's got to be every single place. And my work is, I do talk about every angle, so I appreciate that. And what I'm doing here today, in a situation like this, in this context, is talking about these myths that block people. Because I know people are moved by the social justice reasons. Every reason. They're moved, they're good people, they're compassionate people. But what it comes down to is that it's not personal choice as much as literally the how to do it, to feel empowered to be able to do it, to then get rid of all those excuses to be able to focus on things like, this is bigger than me. And that's what happens when people make the shift. It's really a consciousness shift. They have the room then to take in all of these other angles and all of these other approaches. So my answer is yes. I mean, yes, all of it. But this is, this today is what I'm talking about. I talk about many things, and I'm so grateful to you and everybody who's doing your work for talking about it in different ways, in different days, in different ways as well. So thank you. Thank you for that. I hate plants. They're so obnoxious. They are so annoying, right? Plants, God. Listen. There is speculation and language we can use about plants responding to stimuli. Is that the same thing as plants having feelings? In my opinion, no. We can anecdotally know how we feel if we cut a carrot versus if we slit the throat of an animal. And we do know that animals have feelings and they do suffer. That's what I know. I might be wrong. 100 years from now, we might have such definitive evidence that carrots are bleeding and screaming when I cut them, and I will make a different decision then. I will, because I could be wrong. But right now, what I definitively know is that animals do suffer and feel pain, and plants respond to stimuli. They don't have a central nervous system. They don't have feelings. They don't have the kind of responses that all living animals do. Right? There is a difference. There's a difference. Ultimately, that's what we can only do what we can based on the information that we have. And that's what I say to that. You feel strongly about that, and that's awesome. But I find people bring that up, to use as an excuse to not stop eating animals. And what I have a problem with that, and you're not the one saying that, but what I have a problem with is when people say it in a way of like, well, what about the plants? Well, okay, you can care about the plants, but can you stop eating animals and also care about the plants? Like, can you care about the animals such that you're not killing them, and then let's figure out the plants? Does that make sense? That's all I got. I do, I love plants. It's a cost-effective way to eat on a vegan diet. I mean, obviously, convenience foods cost more whether they're vegan or not. You're paying more for the convenience. But when you look at the cost of whole grains and whole fruits and whole vegetables and whole lentils and beans and dried beans, you look at the cost of those foods, obviously compared to the convenience foods, they're going to be lower. And compared to the cost of animal products, they're still going to be lower. So the bottom line is if you want it the most cost effectively in terms of health and in terms of money, then the answer is whole plant foods. And the truth is that the costs that we pay in what we eat are bigger than just the money, right? I mean, it really is bigger than just money. We're paying costs in our health, the cost of the environment, the cost of the animals. We're paying huge costs in all these ways in consuming animal products. And no matter how you cut it, you're still going to be paying less when you buy whole plant foods. So absolutely, there's a way to do that. Yes. You're going to find that I'm not into theories. And I eat food, not concepts. And that's just kind of how I am. I'm not any one kind of vegan. I love all food. I eat raw vegetables and cooked vegetables. I love gluten. I like wheat. I like soy. I like fruit. I like everything, okay? And I like water. Mostly filtered. Spring sounds good. I don't have an answer. Organic. So there's a lot of interesting studies going on all the time with organic vegetables. I mean, you can go round and round in terms of what they're determining. I think at this point they're really, again, big picture, I care very much about what we're doing to the earth and what we're doing to the soil, and we do know that when we're not, completely depleting it of nutrients and putting all the pesticides in, that it's better things in the soil. So ultimately, I choose organic when I can, but I don't choose organic all the time, because when it comes to also the pesticides that are on the fruits and vegetables, some are highly sprayed and some are not. Like some aren't really sprayed at all. So and they cost a lot more when they're organic. So I kind of educate myself on the vegetables and fruits that tend to be more highly sprayed. Like I really don't get strawberries that aren't organic. I always get raspberries and berries and strawberries that are organic. But blueberries, I have no problem getting blueberries that are not organic because they're not very highly sprayed. So it's not always a black and white answer. You know, sometimes it's just do the best you can, make the best choice you can. And I'd still rather have, you know, fruits and vegetables. If the choice is like, you know, non-organic fruits and vegetables versus, you know, whatever, potato chips, I'm going to choose the non-organic fruits and vegetables, right? So it's kind of also relative to what you're comparing to. It starts in your head. And it starts with what you want, and it starts with your own perception of this. If you think that you are being a pain, and you're being rude, and you're putting people off, and you're restricting things, then that's how you're going to experience it. But if you have the experience that as a vegan, I'm doing the best I can, and I talk about this a lot, that being vegan, we can be 100% vegan, because built into being vegan is imperfection. It's an imperfect world we live in. So if you want to strive for purity and you want to strive for perfection, good luck with that. You're going to become really annoying. And you're going to become really unhappy. Because there's only so much we can do, but there's so much we can do, right? And so we have to decide that if me being vegan means I'm doing the best I can. Now, is it the best we can to accept a cookie that's offered us just because it's offered to us? You're going to have to decide that yourself, right? Or is it the best we can to say, I'm going to do my best, I'm not going to consume anything from animal products, and if there's probably an animal product, I'm not going to do it. But like, if I happen to consume something from an animal product, am I going to freak out, or is someone's going to call me thick? No, you go, you know what? I'm doing the best I can. And that's what we can do. I talk a lot about the fact that I think the biggest misconception about being vegan is that we think being vegan is an end in itself. And that's where we get into that problem with purity and perfection. For me, being vegan is a means to an end. And that end is unconditional compassion. And so when you realize that that's the way to get there, but it's not the end destination, and you lighten up and realize there is so much we can do, and you have a completely different perspective about how it is, and you wind up making choices that reflect what you really care about. Because I never feel guilty. I never feel guilty. I don't. And when you say that you're struggling with what you really want and what you think you should be like, other people are going to think, whatever, just do what you really think is reflecting your own values, and you'll have no problem. You'll have no problem. All right? Thank you so much, everybody.